welcome back to our EFMP story. We have today our executive director and founder, Michelle Norman. We're really excited to have you today and to chat about your experience. I know that because of your experiences and things are still ongoing, but I guess we want to drill into because of how you've gone through it all. You've gone through just dealing with medical, you've done education, the legal components, and the advocacy components. So do you have any tips and tricks for families that we can share to help make this a little easier until we can, as an organization, fix it with legislation?
Well, we talked a little bit about some of the tips and tricks earlier about, just being an advocate, for your child in the very beginning. It's always trusting that gut, and always getting second opinions. Again, I think as military families, we're used to law and order and not questioning. And so I think, changing that mindset of this, you are your kid's best advocate. This person's a great doctor. This person's a great teacher. But again, they're not always looking at it from the way that you are as far as what's best for your child. So I think it's important to be able to speak up and get used to that uncomfortable feeling inside you, like, once you do it, it's going to be great. There are a couple of other things, I know we talked about staying organized, and that's so very important. And if you don't have a printer, and a scanner and all those type things, I really think it's a good investment. And, many people don't realize on your taxes, if you meet over 7.5% of medical expenses on your taxes, you can deduct that. And so there could be things that, if they're medically necessary, if your child needs a particular schooling or tutoring or whatnot, even the printer paper, all that stuff can be deducted if you meet a certain, minimum, 7.5% over your AGI. So keep everything, taxes, receipts, you name it, you keep it.
Tax tips today. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? But that was really good advice to me, and I give it to everybody else too. I'm like, it's so important. And if you need to have a letter from your pediatrician saying it's medically necessary, get that letter. Have a good relationship with your pediatrician. Also have a good relationship with your case manager with EFMP. If you don't know them, contact them. I have one really great one right now. It hasn't always been the case, and we came up with a plan on how often to check in. Right now it's every month. We kind of just make sure is everything great. And if you have not asked for a family services plan, now's the time to do it. It used to be required, but I believe the language has changed to requesting. And this family service plan or individual services plan for families is basically, what are all the issues with your family? And here are the resources that we know of, that the case manager knows of, and we'll put it on a plan. And this plan is supposed to be looked at every time you go to a new assignment, or just, periodically checking in to say, hey, your child still has hearing loss. How are those, audio, are you getting in with an audiologist? Are you having any problems? It's just kind of, someone's keeping track of what's going on with your life. So I would say, ask, contact, and say, how can I get one of these service plans done for my family? Because I have a feeling not very many have that plan.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as our spouses go, my husband has been very engaged with his detailer, and I think that's really important from the get-go. They need to know your EFMP. They need to have a positive relationship, because I think when you foster that, it's going to help with them knowing. You don't want to get orders and go, by the way, did you know we were EFMP? You want to make sure they know early and often that you're EFMP, to ensure that there's no hiccups in the detailing world. So engaging is really important. You don't want to be caught in a funny situation where you're now going to Japan, but you have, a recently diagnosed child. So that's kind of important to at least kind of, and also.
But when you're talking about that, I know that there was some myths and some misconceptions. So we're talking about detailing. So obviously I know your family's story, but there is a stigma sometimes associated with sharing your EFMP status, and that it could negatively impact your career. And I just wanted to ask, what are your feelings on that? What are Cass's feelings on that?
We've been very fortunate. The Navy's been very good to us. I know that myth exists, but we have not seen it. for any of the families that we know personally in EFMP, and particularly for ours. He was already close to being a 04, I think, at the time that we were EFMP, but he's made every promotion, every board, no problems, but I will caveat to say that we've had to make hard decisions. There have been times where for him to continue upwards in his career, we had to look at things together and say, maybe it's best that we stay behind while you go do your Charleston thing and you go do your New York thing. So those were not easy, but so you have to find that balance between career and family, and what can you handle as a family. I could have probably taken the kids with me and gone 8 months, to Charleston, and we've gone 4 months or 5 months to New York. But what would that have done to Marissa's, education? It probably would have been a big mess, bigger than it was already, So there are hard decisions, but on the flip side of it, you can make lemonade out of lemons, right?
But I
And
think
so
that's normal for all military experiences. You're going to make those hard decisions, whether it be choosing a work opportunity for your spouse that maybe hurts your military spouse career a little bit. But, everyone's making those kind of either or choices. And sometimes you're voluntold and you don't get a choice. But at least with the EFMP categories, you have regions and at least a say. So that's good. It's good to hear that he has not felt that stereotype of.
I think so. There was a study done by the Marine Corps about EFMP, and I think it was maybe done a decade ago. And they found that it did not hurt careers. In fact, they promoted more and stayed in longer in the Marine Corps through the EFMP program. So they also have a fantastic program. It's very well staffed, and they do have attorneys. And so I think that, when you have that type of support system, it really is not a negative, and they're there to help you and be able to serve your country, which is what we all want to do. So good on the Marine Corps, and I think the Navy is definitely leading the way in that respect. So I'm very excited about that.
We went off into that myth busting thing, but is there any other tips and tricks that that you would like to share?
Give yourself grace. I've said this before. We're not going to always get it right. It's overwhelming, this world. With EFMP, we know it's hard to be able to juggle all of these struggles of taking care of a child and maintaining a household, especially during deployments and geobatch assignments. It's never easy for EFMP, but we're hoping with Partners in Promise that we're going to make it better and be able to give the support to these families to like I said, serve our country and give the help that these families need. And don't be afraid to be the squeaky wheel because it's not just about you, it's about helping others. And that's one thing about Partners in Promise, is that we know that many of these improvements to EFMP may not help our families, but it's going to certainly help the families that are coming after us. And that gives us great joy to know that this might have a lasting effect many years after we move on to the next adventure. So please join Partners in Promise, become engaged with us. And I think that, we're going to see a lot of movement in this next couple of years to ensure that our families have all those educational hurdles removed so that their kiddos can thrive and be independent, members of society. That's what we want.
Yeah, I think it's just, there's so many cool things and ways to participate, whether that's just advocating for your individual child and resources that we have available to you that make it easier to do that. We spoke with Grace Kim, who is a special education attorney, Michelle's special education attorney specifically, and also one of our co-founders. And she's shared tips and tricks about due process and IEP meetings and how you can best prepare your documentation and what should be included. There's tons of resources if really all you can do right now is do your family and advocate in that way. That's amazing, because if we all raise the bar a little bit to set, say school districts, we're not going to just take this waiting out process anymore. We are educated. We know what we're doing. Maybe they'll start to listen in other ways. And then until they do, we will continue to advocate with legislation as well. And if
Agree.
you want to be involved, there's always ways to do that too. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have it all, I think that it's all for the greater good. And we really put a lot of value in collaborating, partnering with, everybody, legislators, families, MSOs, the outside civilian communities, special education communities. So we've seen a lot of progress, and keep our fingers crossed. We're hopeful. We're hopeful for change, hopeful for reform.
as an organization, we're excited because we can see that there is that support. And I think that our voices are, speaking of voices, we have small people in this house all the time. But our voices are elevated and right now, and it's important to keep sharing our stories.
And I just feel very blessed to be a part of this community. There's some amazing, resilient, strong families, and I know that we can learn a lot from each other and build each other up and advocate together for our families. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and keep an eye out for more stories coming.